You're listening to the Churchosity podcast, where we talk about the Gen X take on church culture. Welcome to another episode of the Churchosity podcast. My name is Heath Brady, and I am your host.
And my name is Andrea Brady. I'm your co-host.
We're Gen Xers, giving our perspective on church culture. This podcast is dedicated to the Gen X Christians.
You know, the ones who just want to keep it simple.
The ones who just want to live quiet, peaceable lives.
We represent the generation of Christians who sometimes look at what others are doing and thinks,
whatever.
But as it says in 1 Timothy 1:5,
the goal of our instruction is love.
From a pure heart.
And from a good conscience.
And a sincere faith.
So here we are, Andy, back in the saddle again.
Where have you been?
Where have you been?
Right next to you.
Purgatory. No, man, I tell you, it has been, what's it been, 3 months? 2 months, at least 3 months since our last episode?
It's been a little while.
It's been a while.
We've been a little busy.
We've been a little busy. What have we been up to?
We moved.
We moved.
You know.
We moved to Europe.
Yeah, right.
I wish. We moved to Paris, France. No. We didn't move too far away.
No, we didn't, but it was a major upheaval.
Yeah.
Upheaval.
Upheaval.
I like that word.
Upheaval-esque.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a major move to a different city. Not too far away from where we were, but we're in a different city, in a different state. Still in the Pacific Northwest.
Yep.
So I have to tell you, I think I kind of like the weather here a lot more than in the greater Seattle area.
Yeah. I think the weather here is a little nicer. I know the weather here is a little nicer.
And a little warmer.
A little warmer.
Except for the past few days, we did get like 4 inches of snow at our house.
Yeah.
But it's gone already.
And people down in this area are very friendly and talkative, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I forgot what life was like prior to the Seattle freeze.
Yeah. Until
we moved here.
A lot of people don't know what the Seattle freeze is.
Oh, that's right. The Seattle freeze. When did that start? Like 20 years ago?
Well, no disrespect to our friends in the Seattle area.
Of course not, because we're native Seattleites.
We are. We love Seattle.
Which gives us the right to diss on Seattleites.
A little bit. Well, one of the things about the Seattle freeze, I'd say, 25, 30 years ago, people stopped talking to each other like they used to.
Yeah.
The friendlier you are, the more suspicious they are of you.
Exactly. Because and then of course, with the creation of cell phones and smartphones, that contributed immensely to the problem of the Seattle freeze.
Yeah.
And it's just been really, really interesting as time has gone by, the way that people just don't talk to you. Or to each other.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah.
I'm glad that we're in this new environment now, and it's really fun.
Yeah.
We're enjoying it a lot, and we're exploring, because I don't know where anything's at.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people, I memorize maps, and I like to know where I'm going, and I like to know the sneaky back ways to get everywhere, and I like to explore my neighborhood. So anyway, I'm having fun learning a whole new area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a blast. I got a new job.
Yay.
Absolutely love my new job.
Round of applause.
Especially for those who know us personally, you know how big of a deal it is that I found this new job.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of people praying for me to get this kind of a job, and come to find out after I got the job that there were people who were praying for the person they were going to hire for this job, like for a very long time.
Aww.
And I'm still kind of flabbergasted by that fact.
I love it when there are answers to prayer.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we all love answers to prayer, but it's awesome.
It's one of those things about the character of God that creeps me out when it happens to me personally.
Yeah.
Meaning that I'm the recipient of answered prayers. You know, I mean, it's, and I mean creepy in a cool way. It's creepy when I'm praying for others and the Lord answers those prayers and blesses that other person. But this was one of those instances where it's something that you and I have been praying for like over a year. And meanwhile, running in the background was this situation here where we are now, and what and whom they've been praying for at the same time, plus a bunch of other crazy events that were happening behind the scenes, and everything just like supernaturally
all came together. Yeah.
And so it's just absolutely wonderful. So that's been neat. And we, of course, found a new home church.
Yep. That
we pretty much from the moment we walked in the door fell completely in love with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like our new church.
Yeah, it's a blast. And we're already getting super involved, and it's pretty cool.
Back in the saddle again. So I'm sure that especially for our regular listeners, you notice a little difference in our intro. There's some things that Andrea and I have been talking about over the last few months while we've been preparing to come back and continue on in this journey. And we just kind of noticed towards the end of season 2 that almost every single topic that we would talk about when we were putting our content together, we were having conversations that revolved around people from our generation. Right.
And how, especially Christians from our generation, people in the church from our generation, and how they probably are reacting or thinking when it comes to all of the stuff going on in our world, in our culture, in our country, in our community, and especially in the church.
Yeah. Every generation has a different perspective, it seems.
Yeah.
By and large. I mean, everyone has their individual idea and perspective and opinion, but, you know, it just seems to me that these groups of people, based on their age, tend to view things a little differently.
Yeah. And we've just sort of, you know, we decided we're going to, you know, it's a new year.
Yeah.
New spin.
New beginnings.
Yeah. New season. So welcome to season 3.
Yay.
It's pretty fascinating. It's our 3rd season already. And so we are going to kind of shift gears in how we present our content. It's not going to be so much of a series type of thing where we talk about heavy, deep theological stuff, although we will at times, because I think that especially for you and I, Andy, and our generation of Christians, we kind of love that theology stuff a little bit more than the newbies, if you will. Because
everything comes back to doctrine and theology, and what does the Bible say? What does Scripture say about everything?
But that's the thing. In our generation, most people in our generation would totally agree with that statement that you just made.
Right.
But other generations, I don't think, put as high of a priority on it comes back to doctrine and theology and what does Scripture say. And that's the thing, is that as we've talked about all of the different topics, you know, everything from sensationalism to church hurt and spiritual abuse to cancel culture, like all of those things that we talked about in season 2, the conversation always came back to it. Just doesn't, like, you and I privately off the microphone would be like, what is up with people? You know, why is everybody wound so tight? Why are people doing this? And why aren't people just reading their Bibles? And I also found, and I think you mentioned this too previously, that we found that we just seem to be kind of paddling upstream with our content because everything was so heavy.
Yeah.
And like bad news.
So we're going to add a little more fun to it? A little more lighthearted stuff.
Well, yeah, because I mean, we're Gen Xers, you know, we're the generation that's just like, whatever,
Yeah.
you know, leave us alone, you know, quit bugging me, you know, and to be honest with you, this is the part of my Christian faith where I identify with all of the times in the Gospels where Jesus went off to be alone. And you know, if he wasn't a perfect man, I mean, we know Scripture says that he was perfect.
Right.
Like, let's just say he was like me and went off to be alone and somebody found him, I would have lost my friggin' mind.
Yeah. Like, oh, man.
Because I'm a Gen Xer, and there are just a lot of those moments where we're just like, whatever, man. Like, you do you, bro, because I just want to chill, you know? And so, you know, we'll talk about, you know, we'll bring up movie quotes, we'll bring up song lyrics, you know, because that's just kind of how we roll. And
well, that's who we are.
Yeah. And we'll have all kinds of fun talking about stuff. And so we just decided that that was what we were going to do in this new season and go in this new direction and see where it lands us. And we're going to talk about things probably that we haven't talked about before. Because we were so focused on talking about the hard stuff and the tough stuff. And we still will talk about some tough things. Yeah. Don't you kind of feel like if we approach things from the vantage point of a Gen X Christian, that we can talk about things that we couldn't before?
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Good.
So it may come as a shock to you and to our audience.
Yeah.
But I've kind of taken an all things break from Twitter. I don't really spend a lot of time on social media at all anymore, and it's kind of been refreshing. But I do, you know, have a gander from time to time. And it seems to me like the thing that everybody is kind of griping and complaining about in the church culture is still all things COVID.
Oh, still. Yeah.
It's just absolutely nuts. And you know, Andy, you and I had a conversation recently, and I'm going to bring this up here on this episode because this is one of those moments where I would love it if I wish that we were doing a live stream, because I would love to have audience participation and feedback, like in the moment. So if you're listening to this right now and you want to chime in, shoot us a comment on one of our socials, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter.
Our handle is @ChurchosityPod.
Correct. And just send us a message what you think about this. But when we get on an airplane, we are putting our very lives in the hands of someone who has gone to school, received serious training, has logged hours upon hours upon hours, like in the hundreds, just to be able to fly the airplane. We're getting on that airplane and we are trusting that person who is like professionally educated and trained.
Right.
And we don't think twice about that. Or we go to the doctor who has gone to college for 14 years and been an intern and done a residency and done their rounds and has hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in the thousands of experience and knowledge. And if you're going to see them as your personal doctor, they now have a practice. So this is somebody who at the very beginning of their private practice is about 10 years younger than us at the absolute youngest. But this is a person you go in and you tell them what's the matter, and they go, oh, this is what's the matter. And then they give you a prescription of some kind, and you trust that. Not even second guessing, right? For the most part.
Well, yeah.
But what I've noticed is that when it comes to all things COVID, now all of a sudden, everybody else has become the expert.
Yeah, everyone has their own
because they did what they consider research.
Yeah.
You know, they saw something on the internet, so it must be true. They heard something that somebody said that they heard from somebody who was talking to somebody. And this is what they said, so it's got to be true, right? It frustrates me so much because on the spectrum of all things COVID, you have, I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to guess that you probably have about 70%, or maybe a little higher, but I'll just say 70% of Americans kind of land in that middle. Like, we're going to get a vaccine, we're going to get a booster, we're going to wear a mask, we're going to stay home unless we absolutely have to go somewhere, and not draw attention to ourselves and just kind of live life every day. And if I catch the latest variant of the virus, I know I'm not going to die because I have the vaccine. Like, I would say that probably about 70% of America is like that.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense.
But then on one end of the far end of the spectrum, you've got 15% of the culture, let's say, that's like anti-vax, anti-booster, anti-mask. I've got, you know, my own personal immunity, or I caught COVID, so I'm good. I got the antibodies in my body. Like, you've got that camp.
Right.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got like another 15%. Let's see, 15 and 15, 100. So my math is good.
Okay.
Let's say you got this other 15% of the country that's like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to go outside because I might catch COVID and die. And it's like, those two extremes are what you hear the most. Because that's the whole point, right? Well, the majority of people don't want to stir the pot, don't want to draw attention to themselves. And it's funny because the people on either end of the extreme call the people in the middle sheeple. That we're just like casually giving up our rights and, you know, giving our wills over to the government and blah, 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 right? And like, what's sad is when those conversations are taking place in the church.
Right, they shouldn't be.
Of all the places where people should not be bickering and fighting and arguing and disputing is in the church.
Right. It's kind of a distraction from what we're supposed to be focused on.
Which is what?
Christ and the gospel.
Amen. And so as a Gen Xer, for me, to go to church on Sunday and have people more worried about whether or not to wear a mask, whether or not to show proof of vaccines, you know, whether or not we should get a vaccine, like all things COVID, like I think that's the problem. Like, come to church, worship Jesus, and go home.
Right.
If you're coming to church because you have an agenda that you want to like intentionally draw attention to yourself,
or stir up trouble,
which I see people do.
Yeah.
There are people who on purpose,
not at our church,
go to churches, right? In previous churches.
Yes.
There are people who would go to church and intentionally try to buck the system, draw attention to themselves to make a point and stir up trouble. And, you know, scripture says to live quiet, peaceable lives. Why in the world would you go to church and live a loud, obnoxious life?
Right.
You know what I mean? So that whole conversation about all things COVID, like, I know you and I say all the time, like, we're so done. And yet, there it is. You know? And
maybe it exists because we pay attention to it.
Exactly. And as a Gen Xer, I don't want to be paid attention to. It's so funny because, like, I don't have a problem with whether or not somebody wants to get a vaccine. It's up to them.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be mandatory, but as I've said before, I think everybody should get the vaccine.
Yeah. I think it's a smart thing to do, but that everyone's entitled their opinion, I guess, and what they want to do with their body.
Yeah. But when you're making those decisions based on opinions rather than facts. Mm-hmm. That's where it gets bad. Mm-hmm. And then those opinions become this made-up story that you did research.
Right.
You know.
Well, I guess, people can make their educated decision once they have all the facts on what they think is best for themselves. But they shouldn't expect everyone to feel the same way,
right,
and believe the same thing and have the same opinion.
And I know that there are people listening right now that disagree with everything that we just said. Mm-hmm. And you know what's so amazing? That's okay. It's totally fine. So why don't we talk about something else then?
Okay. Let's talk about how sexist Happy Days was back in the day.
Wow. No segue or nothing.
Well, I don't know what show we were watching recently, but it was kind of a parody of some of the old 80s shows.
Oh, live in front of a studio audience.
It was awesome.
Yes.
So it got me thinking.
Yeah.
What were some of the shows that we watched back in the day?
Yeah.
In the, late 70s, 80s. Anyway, and Happy Days was always my favorite show. And,
I think that Tuesday night television on ABC
yes,
was the best night of television when we were kids.
Tuesday night, 8 o'clock.
Yep.
Happy Days. 8:30.
Laverne and Shirley.
Laverne and Shirley. Followed by, do you remember? 9 o'clock, ABC.
ABC, 9 o'clock on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't
Three's
remember.
Company.
Three's Company, duh. Because most of us...
The Forbidden Show.
Yeah, because most of us kids were put to bed by 9 o'clock back then. That was no longer considered prime time back then.
Yeah. But I tried watching an episode of Happy Days recently, and it was so cringy.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what you think are some of the 80s shows that stand the test of time.
What do you mean by stand the test of time?
Well...
Like they could show them today and get away with it?
Yeah. Or...
none of them.
Exactly.
Maybe All in the Family.
All in the Family.
Archie Bunker.
That's what at the time, they were very progressive.
Very.
I mean...
Like controversially progressive.
Yes. In that they were kind of in a satirical way, making fun of the
racism,
old way of thought.
Yeah, racism and misogyny and ageism. Like all of the isms and ologies that exist in culture today, they were... like you said, in a satirical manner, poking fun at that.
Yeah.
And really, really pushing the envelope.
Yeah, they were.
Like, I'm sitting here thinking right now of, like, some of Archie Bunker's most famous zingers. Like, his daughter's boyfriend, then husband. Didn't he call him, like, Meathead or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah. Sally Struthers was the actress. Is that right? Yeah.
And I think, wasn't he Jewish?
He was Irish.
No, not Archie. Meathead.
Oh, Meathead? Yeah, he was Jewish.
Okay. And that was
Rob
Reiner.
Rob Reiner.
But I meant in the character.
Yeah, his character was Jewish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Huh.
And then, of course, you had the infamous Sammy Davis Jr. episode, which was like the first African-American on a sitcom, I think.
Well, Meathead had Lionel as a friend.
That's right.
And that's where the Jeffersons
the spin-off.
Yes. Jeffersons was a spin-off of All in the Family.
Oh, man, there's another show that... Yeah. Yeah, I remember you and I were talking about this the other day, about how it would be so great if some of these old sitcoms from the 70s and early 80s would reboot, because especially some of the ones that were like racially significant, like Welcome Back, Kotter, Chico and the Man, Sanford and Son.
I love
Different
Sanford and
Strokes,
Son. Yeah.
To do like a more modern spin. But here's the thing. You go back and watch a lot of those old sitcoms, and I think, like you asked the question, what of those shows could stand the test of time? I don't think that very many of them could, because even if they approached things from an equality perspective, there still was the separation based on gender, based on race, based on age.
I mean, they really did work within that time that they were filmed.
Yeah.
What were some of the other shows that we loved? Well, I mean, Family Ties.
Family Ties.
That might stand the test of time, maybe.
Yeah. Well, they didn't bring religion into that show, but there was always politics.
Oh, yeah.
Because the parents were very, very liberal.
Yeah, they were hippies from the 60s.
And Alex P. Keaton, the Michael J. Fox character.
He was a staunch Republican conservative kid.
His idols were Nixon and Reagan, and he would get frustrated with things, and like there would always be those scenes where the camera would be up real close to his face, and he would be like venting his frustrations like he was talking to his parents. Yeah. But then the camera would pull back, and it would be the pictures of Nixon and Reagan that he had on his wall.
Yeah.
Those were funny episodes.
Yeah. Does anyone watch The Cosby Show anymore? Is it even on the air anywhere? Can you stream it anywhere?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I'd be surprised.
To be fair, I haven't actively been looking for it.
No.
But if cancel culture is authentic,
right,
then I think the answer to your question is no.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, you can't deny that it was one of those shows that everyone loved back
so
then.
Groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Everything about that show. Amazing.
Yeah.
And the spinoff. Different World. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Really, really good stuff. But yeah, those shows came out like later in the 80s. Like I remember.
Oh, that's true.
I remember those shows being on after I graduated from high school, which was in 1989. But Cosby Show was on for a long time. Like 7 seasons or something like that. It was on for a pretty long time.
Right. I think.
But you brought up Happy Days.
And
how sexist it was.
Well, it was because it was my favorite show as a kid. I loved that show. Well, that and Little House on the Prairie. So I guess Little House, of course, stands the test of time because it was
no, it doesn't.
A period piece.
It doesn't stand the test of time. They couldn't put that show on now.
Why not?
Because it's total patriarchy.
I know, but it's a period piece of like.
Oh, so that's the excuse.
Pioneer days.
That's the excuse.
Yeah.
We can show it because it's a period piece because it's talking about a different.
It was
time.
filmed as a period piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Going back to Happy Days.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's interesting how some of those gender roles that they had.
Right. Talk about
then.
patriarchy.
Yeah. Or machismo and,
what was considered cool. Like if you look at those shows like Happy Days or Laverne and Shirley, which was a spinoff of Happy Days.
Right.
You look at those shows, which are period pieces because they're supposedly the 50s. And you have the father who is off, earning the paycheck. The mother who is at home taking care of the home and raising the children. Typical patriarchy. And then you have the perfect all-American nuclear white family with the one son and the one daughter, and of course the son is the older. And
we won't even talk about the oldest brother that they got rid of after season 1.
That's right.
Which I used to know what his name was, but I can't remember now.
That's like trying to remember who the first James Bond was, because there was one before Sean Connery.
Oh, okay.
But Richie Cunningham was like, the consummate white bread 50s boy who was clean and, he was popular and whatever. But to be cool, you had to be
like the Fonz.
You had to be Arthur Fonzarelli. You had to be
a greaser.
You had to wear leather. You had to ride a motorcycle. And what made you even more cool is if you smoked cigarettes.
Yeah,
because,
but they didn't show that on the show.
Well, if it was a troublemaking kid, they had characters that would smoke. Like if they were like a criminal.
I think they had one episode where Joni tried smoking.
She tried to be like a rebellious greaser.
I think.
You know? Well, think about 50s period pieces. Grease.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing is such a terrible, terrible message, especially to girls, right?
But we loved it, didn't we?
Well, yeah. The music is great.
Yeah.
There's great comedy.
Kind of messed me up.
But think about
All
it.
these sexist shows really...
Right. So think about it. How did Sandy end up getting Danny to fall in love with her and commit to her?
She had to dress like a greaser.
Yeah, she had to dress up like a greaser.
Yeah.
And smoke cigarettes.
Yeah.
And nobody catches that because they're so mesmerized by, oh my gosh, they're in that dream car, Greased Lightning, and they're flying off into the clouds together. They're in love.
I know.
And we miss all of that misogyny, all of that sexism.
Well, the same message is in Dirty Dancing.
Ooh. Okay, let's go there.
I mean, that message permeates.
Which message?
That if you want to be with the person you want to be with, you have to change who you are and become more like them.
Right. But Baby didn't become a greaser.
She tried. That's
Well, she
what
went
the whole thing
she
about.
hung out with that whole crew of people that were doing all of the dirty dancing. Oh, I see what you're saying. So she had to do what they were doing to get what she wanted.
Mm-hmm. She's the Richie Cunningham
Got it.
of that scenario.
Well, you know what, Andy?
Same with some of the...
But you know what, Andy?
What?
Patrick Swayze's character is considered the hero of the story. Because, after all, nobody puts Baby in a corner.
No, nobody. Well, I just thought that was interesting. If you think about it, you could probably come up with a couple more movies where that was the case too.
Such as?
Maybe Pretty in Pink?
Pretty in Pink. Best character in that movie is Ducky.
Yeah.
Who's like the dork.
Right.
In the
Who that
movie.
she probably should have really ended up with.
Well, of course. But you know what's interesting?
What?
You bring up just as a side note.
Uh-huh.
Originally, the studio did not like John Hughes's original ending, which was that she ended up with Ducky.
Oh, really?
And the studio hated that ending. And
Okay.
the actor who plays Blaine,
Yeah.
who she actually ends up with at the end of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
he was already off filming another movie and had shaved his head.
Oh, no.
So they had to bring him back to reshoot the whole ending, and he's wearing a wig.
Oh, that's right.
Which,
I
if you
remember that.
notice, now everybody hopefully that's listening is going to go back and rewatch Pretty in Pink. And when they get to the end of the movie, he's wearing a wig, and his hair's different.
His hair's different.
So John Hughes
Uh-huh.
did something out of rebellion to the studio.
Because he did not like the fact
No, he was so mad, but
that
they're
he
the
had
one
to
cutting the
refilm
check.
that. Yeah,
So
yeah.
what did he do?
he make a different movie that
He
with a
made
di-
another movie that almost has the same identical combination of characters in it as Pretty in Pink.
What is the movie?
Some Kind of Wonderful.
Some Kind of Wonderful. There you go. That's
And
the
what
one.
happened at the end of that movie? The main character of the movie,
The
Eric's,
girl's the misfit. in
the
that
girl
one.
is the misfit. The girl is Ducky,
Right.
but she's the misfit. She's
Right.
the drummer who's the misfit.
Mm-hmm.
And she's secretly pining away for Eric Stoltz's character, the artist, the clean-cut boy who comes from money, sort of.
Okay.
Well,
And
actually,
she-
no, he doesn't come from money.
She ends
but,
up with him. In
but
the
they end up together at
Got
the
it.
end of the movie, and he rejects the rich girl.
Got it.
It's like the polar opposite ending of Pretty in Pink.
Yeah.
But John Hughes wanted that message that you can't help who you love, and you shouldn't have to change who you are to be with the person that you love. If two people love each other, they should be able to be together.
Right.
That was the point that John Hughes was trying to make.
Yep.
And so, yeah, you factor in, like, you start going back to all the different movies and sitcoms from when we were kids and bringing up all the sexism and misogyny and even racism and stuff like that. Like, these are things that our generation, we were oblivious to,
Right.
especially for us white folks.
If you sit down and start scrutinizing it, it's really eye-opening.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
Like seeing the way that on these old shows and these old movies, the way that female characters dressed, or the way that male characters dressed, the way that female characters spoke, the way that male characters spoke, the way that they spoke to each other. And so like you asked the question, do you think any of these shows could stand the test of time? And a lot of these, I just don't think they could.
No.
Because there's just things that we shouldn't be saying or doing or conversing about or promoting today. And I would argue that we never should have.
Yeah.
In the first place. You know, one of the
Careful, you're sounding awfully woke over there.
Somebody asked me once, not too long ago, Heath, are you woke? No, I am not woke, but I'm awake enough.
Well, I don't like the way people label.
Not right. And we say that all the time, how much we hate labels.
Yeah.
Why can't we just be Christians?
Right.
Why can't we just be Christians who want to love Jesus and love reading his word and apply theology to our lives without drawing ridiculous amounts of attention to ourselves, trying to stir the pot and create just another skewed movement within the church, and ironically, like a lot of these old shows that we're talking about, like those characters would go to church on Sunday. They would get married in churches. Like they're like, even though some of these are period pieces, like Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, that's the 50s,
right?
And yet people still went to church. Or even on Three's Company, people still went to church.
Laverne and Shirley is an interesting show. I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on just Laverne and Shirley.
Maybe we should.
Well, I just think it's interesting because their scenario kind of fell outside of the normal stereotypical patriarchy, normal nuclear family thing, because these are two young gals who are independent, who move in together and are roommates and are, watching each other's backs, and they're just living their life. And it's not really, they're very independent,
right?
And it's very different.
And then you have the sweat hogs, Lenny and Squiggy, the greasers.
Yeah, that are bumbling into their...
Hello. Boom. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Who were in love with Laverne and Shirley. Yeah.
Yes.
Who were in love with Laverne and Shirley, but Laverne and Shirley wouldn't give them a time of day. Why? Because they were greasers.
Yeah.
And they were gross.
They
right?
were. Yeah.
So Shirley had, like the perfect boyfriend who was Carmine. He could sing and he could dance and he was athletic.
Right.
And then Laverne never had a steady boyfriend because she was like
dating around.
Yeah, she played around. So it was kind of like the Odd Couple.
I think Laverne had a thing for the Fonz for a while.
Yeah, because she had a cameo. Laverne and Shirley were cameo characters on Happy Days,
right?
And I think actually
Shirley was paired up with Richie.
Yes. Yeah. Just as a side note,
what?
Ron Howard and Cindy Williams, who are Richie Cunningham and Shirley Feeney.
Yes.
They were boyfriend and girlfriend in American Graffiti.
Oh, okay.
Just a weird thing.
See,
I weird out like that. That's why this show's going to be great now, even greater now, because I get to like nerd out on my movie useless trivia, and because I do this all the time. That actor played so and so in such and such a movie,
right? And
you're like, oh, great, humoring me because you don't care,
right? Hey, I know my Happy Days trivia.
That's very, very true.
Yes.
These are all really cool things that we've been talking about, and thinking back to all these shows that we used to watch when we were kids, and the subject matter, and it just really makes me think like heavily on how we always talk about, gosh, can it be like the good old days? Can it be? I wish we could just go back to the way things were back then,
Right.
And there's an element of truth to that. And that element of truth is how everybody just kind of left everybody alone to do their thing. Like we did what we did. in the 80s. We did what we did. We played with who we played with. We listened to what we listened to.
Oh, I see.
We went to the movies
As
like
a
we went to the
kid,
movies
we were
as
free.
kids.
Yeah.
And yet, most of us in the church were oblivious to what was actually happening in our culture. You know, we thought that misogyny was normal and okay.
Mm-hmm.
We thought that ageism was normal and okay.
Mm-hmm.
We thought that sexism and patriarchy was normal and okay. And so watching those shows, because I forget the name of the network, but there's a network where you can stream like all of these old shows from the 70s
Oh, like
and 80s.
TV Land and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You watch these shows, and as you said at the beginning, it's cringeworthy to think that, you know, my gender treated your gender like that 40 years ago, and it was okay. It was normal. You know, to think that people with my skin color treated people that didn't have my skin color as lessers, and it was okay.
Right.
Like, but we were oblivious to all of that. And so I get really, really agitated. Here I go getting preachy, forgive me, sermonitis of the mouth. I get really agitated when I get labeled as woke, or when any Christian who is white especially gets labeled as woke, because we see that deficiency within the church. And not only do we see that deficiency that's within the church, we see that it's been there for a long time. I would argue systemic.
Yeah.
And I think that especially as Christians, especially as white Christians, it would do all of us in the church some good if we took the time to go back and watch some of those old shows. Watch Happy Days. Watch Laverne and Shirley. Watch Three's Company.
Or All in the Family.
Or All in the Family. Watch any
Maybe
of those.
not Three's Company.
Maybe not Three's Company. But what I'm saying is that I think that it would do us all some good in the church if we took the time to go back and watch these shows and see what we got away with. And we never should have been doing it.
And that's all we have to say about that.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Churchosity Podcast, the show with the Gen X take on church culture. And thank you, as always, to my amazing and awesome co-host.
Aw, you're welcome. Follow us on all the socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Our handle is @ChurchosityPod. Drop us a message. Give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you.
And don't forget to spread the word about the Churchosity Podcast. Be sure to tell a friend what we're doing here.
Yeah, let them be a part of the conversation too.
But always remember that the goal of our instruction is love.
From a pure heart.
And from a good conscience.
And a sincere faith.
So we thank you once again for listening, and we'll catch you next time on the Churchosity Podcast. Peace.